I would say a good counselor is an engaged counselor. My name is Mark Valkanet. I'm a pastor at Living Waters Church in Grays Lake. I have been coming to camp since the summer of 1982. I came to serve here in 2004 every year since, and so it's safe to say I love camp. I'm just trying to figure out ways to keep coming back to camp as much as I can. I would say a good counselor is an engaged counselor. Oftentimes, counselors can come and want to just relive the camp experience they had when they were kids. And so sometimes students can get lost in the shuffle. And so they're wanting to build their relationships and they're wanting to hang out with their other counselor friends. And we want to make sure that we understand that camp is for the camper and that our kids are our priority. And we as counselors want to make sure that we are paving the way for them to have a connection with God. And while we do have plenty of activities and things of that nature, we need our counselors and our leaders to understand that the sole purpose is for our kids to connect with the Lord. You're not going to get a lot of rest, right, but hopefully you can get some sort of shred of time asleep. There's just a lot of commotion from the moment that that alarm goes off until it's lights out. There's cleaning the room, there's getting everybody prepared and out to breakfast in time, and we sort of have these schedules that are really finely tuned, and so we need to make sure that everyone stays on schedule. And so when people aren't, there's a lot more commotion and a lot of things that are happening that people are trying to move a little bit quicker. And so we want to make sure that our counselors understand that there's a flow to camp and understand that it is important for them to be punctual and make sure that they are rallying our students to get to where they need to be at the right times. There's tons of activities, tons of connection time, and of course, fantastic services at night. And we want to make sure that our counselors understand that every part of that day is important and critical for our students. The purpose of the counselor meeting is to give information and sort of to reinforce what that day is going to look like. Oftentimes there's a ton of information that our counselors are getting on Monday, and sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming. And so we want our counselors to understand that we are not going to just set you up to fail. We're going to set you up to succeed and to do your job to the best that you can. And so we are going to be available to give you updated information, what that day is going to look like, what the schedule is going to look like, and then answer any questions that we can that they may have, sort of give them a little sense of comfort that they're not kind of trying to figure it out on their own.
Day one, they have that meeting, and then they have another one of those meetings every day throughout the week of camp, and that helps center them and wrap their minds around the schedule and what's going on. A big part of camp is the team competitions. Mm-hmm. You know, they get their color team a week out from camp. They show up prepared with costumes and decor. Yeah. But what are some of the best practices of a counselor during the team competitions? Like, how should they act?
I'm all about competition, and so 100% I'm all in favor of going all out. Love the costumes, love the competition, and love the coaching aspect of it, and maneuvering your kids in places where they can succeed in the competitions. And we want our students to understand that the competitions are real, that these games are real, and that they are fighting for something that is real. What I would also say is that we don't want to sacrifice relationships and sacrifice what we want to see happen at night at the altars. We don't want to sacrifice that on an altar of competition. And so while competition is important, we have to understand that there should be a level of restraint that we have. We have literally teenage support staff that are trying to referee games. And so we want to respond with grace when maybe a call doesn't go our way. I think it's difficult for us to expect that God is going to move through us in a service after we've just chewed out, a 19-year-old support staff in front of our kids. And so we need to understand that there is a connection between those two. And so I'd say go all out for the competitions, but let's also make sure that we are restraining ourselves in a way that is still godly and demonstrating the fruit of the Spirit, even in the midst of a highly competitive game or event.
After a morning and afternoon of team competitions, they have free time where the campers are free to go to the activity center or the beach or the outdoor pool or what have you. What should a counselor be doing during that time?
Some would say rest as much as they can, which is always a good answer. But I think you're never going to go wrong when you can be intentional in engaging your students. And I find that some of the best counselors are the ones that use that time not to get away from their kids, but use that time as a way to develop deeper relationships with their kids. And I know personally how impactful counselors were for me as a student, and they were always the ones that wanted to come down to the beach with us and wanted to play basketball with us and wanted to hang out with us during free time and build relationships with us in our room and sit with us in the dining hall and ask questions about our lives and wanting to engage us personally. You can never go wrong by cultivating those relationships. More than directors and deans, the counselor is going to have the most meaningful and impactful personal relationship in the lives of our students. And so we want them to go home not thinking that, man, that counselor was a jerk, or that counselor was mean or rude or didn't care about me at all, but feeling like, hey, that was somebody that really cared. And understanding that for some of these students, we are helping to shape who they think God and the church and Christianity are. And so we want to make sure that we are representing God in a way that is accurate and representing Christianity and representing the church in a way that will leave them with just a wonderful taste in their mouth of who God is and how much God cares for them. As intensely as we put our efforts into the game and into dressing up in our costumes and decorating our room is the intensity that we should have in ministering to our students. They are being offered life-changing opportunities to make decisions that will impact the rest of their life. And so we need to be making sure that we are intentional in ministering to our kids and being available and ready for them when they have questions or when they need prayer or when they need to talk through some of the perhaps callings that they are walking through and wrestling with. That is the purpose of why we do what we do. That is the purpose of camp, to see our kids engaged. And so we want to make sure that is not the area, even though it's later at night, we want to make sure that is not the environment that we are catching a few Z's or an environment that we are kind of slacking off a little bit.
If there is an issue with a camper that they're having, what do they do?
So that would be a time that they can go to the dean and try to get a response from them to sort of handle it. And we understand that counselors got to stay in the room with the kids at night. And so we often say, let us be the bad guys. Let us be the ones that can bring sort of an alleviation to that situation. Don't feel like you're going to have to deal with these things by yourself. If you can't find a dean, any of our staff will help to point you in the right direction and get you in touch with the right people. All of our directors and leaders have tried to make themselves available as often as possible. And that's one of the things I try to communicate at the meeting. Don't feel like you got to wait until we have a meeting for you to ask a question. You'll see us around with our shirts, and so you can always stop us and we will 100% be available. And we don't expect that you're going to know what the flow of camp is if it's your first time. And so just know that we are intentionally wanting to set you up for success. We rely on you so much, and so we're going to do our very best to be available to answer any questions that we can.